Folks, we're going to begin now, and this is our 3:30 with the engineering department. We have Councilor Driscoll, Councilor Thompson, Councilor Ryan, Councilor Rudd, Mary Robeson from engineering, and
Maria Vigilati.
Maria Vigilati. And what do you do for the engineering department, Maria?
Fiscal officer.
Perfect. All right, great. Do you want to go ahead and start and give us a rundown of engineering in their budget?
Yes. First, I'd like to introduce our division engineers, John Gablehan,
Perfect.
Division Engineer of Design and Construction, Mark Romano, Division Engineer of Mapping and Surveying, and Kelly Haggerty, Division Engineer of Buildings.
All right, great. Great staff right there.
That's the team.
Good.
Okay, so basically our budget is roughly the same as last year.
What page are you on?
Page
are you on?
I am on page 137.
137.
Which is the staffing
Right.
chart. Overall in engineering, we have 3 divisions. As I just introduced, the 3 division engineers. Mapping and surveying does all our surveying and mapping records. They do a lot of surveying for Department of Public Works on their street recon program every year. Building division is responsible for all the capital improvement projects on city-owned buildings. And that includes the Joint Schools Construction Board, which is, as you know, the $200 or $300 million school renovation program at 14 schools. And Design and Construction Division does all our capital improvement projects in the street right-of-way. We have a lot of transportation improvement program projects, which are federally and state funded in some cases, which include bridges, roads. We also have sewer projects.
Back up just a little bit.
Back up just a little bit, okay. So that's basically what all the different divisions do.
Under your staffing, we always talk about the engineers and the difficulty in getting, folks. What do we have for vacant positions right now?
Presently, we have 19 positions that are filled and 7 vacant positions.
So we have 7 vacancies,
But some of those are unfunded.
so of those 7, how many are unfunded?
In this proposed budget, one civil, one is unfunded, and the GIS specialist is funded for half a year.
So you have 5 vacant
Right.
funded positions,
5 fully
and then
vacant.
a half that is okay. And what do we got for a plan to fill those vacancies?
Well, currently, in March, Civil Service held the facilities engineer position and the civil engineer 1 position. So once those results come out, we are hoping to fill 2 facility engineers and a civil 1 position.
Okay.
If there's
Are you hopeful? Is that typically in past tests or that?
Well, we have to, since that test has been held, we have to wait for the results. Otherwise, we can't hire anybody.
When was the last time that test was held?
Facilities engineer was roughly 2 years ago.
And are we typically successful in getting some folks into the department after that test?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Got a couple last time.
Okay. Any questions from counselors so far?
Good so far.
And then we also have a vacant clerk 1 position, which we're looking to fill as well.
Okay.
And that test has not been held.
You said vacant clerk 1 position?
Yes.
That shouldn't be too difficult once the test is held, correct?
I would hold that. I'm looking for someone to fill it provisionally and then take the civil service test.
Okay.
And then we also have the deputy city engineer position, which I would like to fill as well. And if you notice, the salary went up a little bit more in that. It went from an 18E to a 19E, and that's to make the position a little bit more competitive. And if you look at the facility engineer range in salary, it goes up to 77.5, and the deputy should be higher than the division engineer, and it was the high at 76,870. So that's why they moved it up to the 19E.
Now, typically with your deputy city engineer, is that hired from within? Or is that a new hire?
It hasn't been filled in
Hasn't been
quite a
filled.
few years.
Ah.
Before that, it was filled new position, a new person. We really need additional people. So whether we promote from within,
And then
we
you'll have to
still
backfill that?
we still need to backfill afterwards, because I really need additional bodies to handle all these projects that we currently have going on.
Well, you're a busy department, and I think it is obvious those positions, we could use them being filled. And so I wish you luck, and I wish the city luck in that respect. Do we want to continue?
Um,
Do we have a traffic engineer?
we do not have a traffic engineer.
So-
DPW used to have that position, traffic engineer, years ago.
Thank you.
Was that Paul? Was that, or is that, he wasn't a track?
No, he was a planner.
Okay. Great.
It was many years ago.
Do we? Never mind.
No, go ahead, Tim, please.
No, it's okay.
I figured if I wait, you'll wait till the last second and then ask
I'll
a
wait till the
question.
end and it'll look like I'm making it up, yeah.
Okay. All right. So salaries are going up, I don't want to say significantly, but they seem like they're in line with last year's budget. And we had a little bit of real estate left over because of all the vacancies, would be my understanding.
Correct.
Your temporary services, what do those typically go to?
That is for Dominic Vaca. He's a part-time facilities engineer. He retired and has come back part-time to help the building division with their local capital
Is he
projects.
still coming back?
Yes.
Good.
We have a lot of projects with the Parks Department. We have some school district projects other than the JSCB, the parking garage projects, as you just heard from Kyle, and some projects at City Hall, and a bunch of parks projects, like I said.
And your reimbursements from other funds, the 195, it seems pretty consistent over the last few years. What is that?
That's our reimbursement from tip money for city staff time to manage those projects.
It seems pretty consistent. Is it always like that?
It has been the last few years. Yep.
Okay.
Last few years we've had DPW, so that might.
Yeah, a few years back, our surveyors worked some overtime with the DPW road recon crews, but we haven't done that in the past couple of years.
Okay.
So we were reimbursed for DPW, for working overtime under DPW street recon program.
Okay, great.
Do we have that budgeted this year? I don't think so.
No.
Okay.
So the
well,
195 is strictly for our, the tip reimbursement.
Great. Councilor Driscoll, do you have any questions for the engineering department?
I've noticed a projected increase in your activity indicators that you're supposed to be going up and up over. You've gone up a lot since 2017, 2018, 2019. Is that just? Are you worried about increased activity without any increase in staffing? I mean, I guess you're counting on the two that are coming up, or.
And just to clarify, the activity, the numbers are hours, right? So
The numbers are ours, right?
Yeah.
So in the
Period.
2017 estimate, that's what we project would be for the full year of 2017-18, and then in 18-19 we estimated that we would fill our vacancies and where we
Be able
would
to
plug
increase
those hours.
productivity? Okay.
So that, I think that
it's
primarily,
just more hours worked, really. Not
right?
even like-
Yeah, no, I was
for the
just
more people.
My concern is if you're increasing the projected numbers of hours worked without,
Without
it
increasing employees.
it seems like it's difficult already with staffing. So I was wondering how the increase was hoping to be done with.
I mean, I believe basically we took 6 months of 17-18, those hours, and basically doubled them.
Doubled
and
it
Increased them a little bit,
to project.
hoping we filled some of the positions within the 6 months.
Right,
Obviously, we're not going to probably not going to fill all of them,
right.
especially since we're waiting for the test results. We're not going to get those test results until May
Right.
at best.
Okay.
So I always like looking at these major function responsibilities by each department and how people choose to describe it, but there's something weird about hours. Are there other activities that you could look at in the activity?
Like
Yeah,
adding other indicators? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, like an indicator that would be indicative of productivity rather than just hours worked. Because in theory, you could add more staff to the same exact thing, and it would go. All your activity indicators would go up because the activities are all in hours. So we can't see the efficiency in any way with the measure as stated. Do you understand?
The
what I'm
only
saying?
way I can see changing the activity indicators would be like by projects and tasks. You know, how many permits we reviewed,
Right. Yeah, that would be great.
how many projects
How many
are
schools?
in
Yeah.
progress, and how many were completed.
But those vary drastically in size and scope, right? I mean, projects
do, yeah.
taken on.
I mean,
I think permits would be a good one, but I think probably projects would be a difficult one to measure because if you have something like a school project, that's a lot bigger than a small
right,
project
so
in a
I
park
suppose you
or
could do
something.
that dollar-wise or
Yeah,
something like that.
different
I
indicator.
mean, I can tell you approximately how many projects we're working on if
That was my question. How many projects are you working on, and do you feel as if you're at capacity?
we are under capacity.
Okay.
Actually, right now, the building division, like I said, has the 14 school renovation projects, plus they have roughly 15 additional projects for parks, school district, and city hall, other city hall facilities, mainly city hall. In terms of design and construction, they have 17 TIP projects and roughly 8 additional other projects. Plus we have other duties such as the stormwater pollution SWIP reviews, stormwater pollution prevention plans. FEMA, we participate and receive a 15% discount by doing certain tasks to help reduce flooding. And the MS4 responsibilities under DEC.
Can
And all
can
our
I
building-
ask you about the stormwater one? This is my sewer question about Eastwood. Would that be correct? Are we in a redesign for that?
We are doing a study in the Eastwood area and Sedgwick
Sedgwick.
area,
Yes.
evaluating the sewers in that area, and that's has just been initiated.
And is that just Sedgwick, or is that Sedgwick and the outer area, the Eastwood area, or just Sedgwick?
Part of Eastwood is included too. I can get you a map if you're interested in
I am.
that includes the project, the size of the project area, and where it is.
Is this the project that Assemblyman Magnorelli?
Yes, it is.
Okay, that answers it then. Thank you.
That was just initiated.
Okay.
So just going back a little bit, but again, like looking at the activities, for instance, there's retaining walls, and then there's hours spent on retaining walls, so I could see that you spend more on retaining walls the last couple of years than the year before. But like I could imagine like linear feet of retaining walls or like retaining wall projects or something like as a better indicator of activity than hours. Similar with like FEMA related projects, it could be like a number of projects, it could be like a dollar amount of projects, it could even be like a list of projects. I'm not sure how many of them we get, but something about just like the hours is hard to comprehend.
Okay. We can take a look at reconfiguring that.
How does it work? Maybe this is a question for Mary, but with how do we set up activity indicators, or how are the activity indicators set up by department? Is it like a discussion with the mayoral staff and the department head, or does
We
it
basically use the same activity indicators for the last 3 or 4 years. If there's something that the department wants to highlight, that they can suggest it and they give us the information and we put it in.
Okay. Thank you.
Any further questions?
I hold for thinking.
I have a few. So just for those of us, I mean, I'm new to the council, obviously. Can you walk us through, it just is, from inception to project, what is the process like as far as how it's assigned? So, you know, say you get you have one of the joint school construction board jobs to do. How long does it take from inception to realizing you have to complete a project to the design to implementation, typically? Or, I mean, I know it must vary wildly from project to project.
It varies wildly. Probably joint schools isn't the best. I mean, each program is different, really.
Yeah.
Like a TIP project probably takes 4 to 5 years from inception to completion. Joint School Construction Board, we started in this phase in which year? 2015? And we just received we're receiving the 7th of the first 7 schools this week, so the construction bids. So we have 4 contracts that are in the process of being executed and 3 bids that were just received. But basically, it depends upon the source of the funding. If there's a grant involved, normally there's a lot more regulations that we have to follow, and reviews by either state or federal agencies. If it's a school project, we go to SED for review at schematic design development, and final permits. If it's a local project, it tends to go faster because we don't have all the additional reviews.
Right. What would be like a typical parks project, and how long would something like that
Typical parks
take?
projects probably be 2 to 3 years, I would say.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm going to keep asking about the activity indicator. So there's the one with garages. So there's hours. And we just had Kyle Madden talking about the garages and talking about all the in-kind work from other departments. So are the hours just an estimate at a high level of somebody who's like, oh, I think that this percentage of this person is this? Or is it like a timesheet allocation where somebody's like, oh, this week I spent this many hours on this? What's the basis for the number of hours in this?
We fill out a timesheet, and it is project oriented, and then each project is, put into the specific category. But our timesheets are pretty detailed. Every day, each employee writes down how many hours they worked on each project.
So that's very useful. So it seems like this would help in terms of like DPW as a whole, DPW understanding what the value of the services they're getting from engineering is. Okay, thank you. Do you do the so if we do something to the street, engineering goes in, and there's a lot of streets where they don't have curbs, where the street gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. If the city wanted to right size it, is it the Department of Engineering that comes in and says, oh, the street's actually supposed to be 30 foot wide and it's 40 foot wide and it should actually be here? Or is that part of these like surveying?
Basically, the surveying is used to where there's some grading problems on the streets and to better improve the drainage on the streets. So, and if they're replacing the curbing, to have a grading plan so they know how to replace the curbing so that the street properly drains, and the pavement elevations. That's basically the surveying work. So if it's a straight mill and pave on a street that has decent drainage, we don't survey every street for DPW. And like the slurry seals, that doesn't get surveyed at all.
The slurry seal doesn't get surveyed at all?
No, because that's basically
so every unimproved. So if you don't.
But if there's a specific problem on a street with grading and drainage problems, then DPW will contact us, and then we'll send out a survey crew to try and help them with that unimproved street to get it to drain better.
You got more questions, please?
No, I just think of your district when I walk around and there's all the unimproved streets and the people who, there's all these drainage issues all over.
So, Skunk City had some issues.
Not only that, the whole north of Court Street, those areas have issues where the street kind of gets redone and the water no longer goes into the right spot and it collects and builds
those
up.
unimproved streets have that issue a lot.
So we don't proactively go to unimproved. It seems like the unimproved streets have some of the biggest issues in terms of drainage because they're unimproved. So the fact that we're not surveying at those streets feels. Is that, am I saying it rightly? We're not surveying in those places because
Typically not unless there's a known problem.
Unless there's a known. So how do we make a known? We just communicate to you that this street, because I've seen almost every place where I've seen severe, where I've had a person complain about drainage is an unimproved street because all types of stuff happens to the green space.
Unimproved streets don't have any.
Can you go to that microphone? I'm sorry.
Unimproved streets don't have any drainage structures in them. So if you want to start adding curb and drainage structures, you're going to increase your costs. Once you put curb on a road, you're now containing the flow within that curb line. You're going to start adding catch basins. Then we'd have to start to look at what the drainage system is in the street, because now we're going to add more stormwater flow to the sewer system. Onondaga County isn't in favor of adding any more stormwater to the actual combined sewer system, so we'd have to work with the county. So when you start to work on an unimproved street adding drainage structures, you're going to increase your costs. So you'd really have to know where the problem is and see if there's a localized repair that could be made. Unimproved streets are pretty much designed just to sheet flow off to the side and drain into the grass strip. You're not trying to contain that flow within a curb line.
Commissioner, you were involved with the change last year, I believe, with the council relative to the street cuts that were made and how much of the road, when it's been cut into, has to be repaired by the...
Right, where you hit like the 30%.
It was a third,
right.
Correct?
A 30%.
Okay, so 3% less than a third.
We've been working with National Grid on that, and that's a work in progress. Actually, we've had meetings with them this within the last month or so to try and instill that requirement in them, and they're also, of course, asking for a pilot to continue a pilot project that has been underway to have a little bit different standards than what we typically require. So that's pretty much a work in progress with them.
Okay, I wouldn't be in favor of any more pilots with that, but personally, but I bring this up because the whole of the city has been cut up by Dermot, and Decathon, and while they only cut probably a 6 foot by 3 foot or 4 foot, they cut it all the way down the street. And they usually do one continuous cut all the way down the street, plus all those cuts in front of each house. So my belief is that if we added up the amount of cuts that they did on the streets, I know up in Tip Hill, and I saw up in Strathmore, it's the same thing, that it probably is more than a third of the street. Or if not, it's pretty close.
Right.
So are we in discussions with them relative to this, or how
Yes.
do we gain? Okay.
We are definitely in discussions with them on that, and I agree. Any street cut in the road, even small or big, it lessens the length of the lifespan of the road.
Sure does, and they have to be called back. When they cut it one year, they cut it last year, and they're back 3-4 times during the first year, just
Repairing it.
repairing.
Right. Well, some of the
We know
some of the
where it's
repairs
going.
are like temporary, and then they come
Yes.
back and do the permanent restoration. So we're also trying to make them do the permanent restorations in a more timely manner, because having a temporary repair for months on end is not acceptable.
Okay. So it's, I was sure that we probably were doing something along those lines, but I know that last year it was a concern with the counselors and changing the amount of the cut, and it went to 30%. So that was it.
Yep,
So,
and also like a lot of the cuts are like, I mean, the rule is if you cut within 2 feet of the curb, you're supposed to pave all the way to the curb.
Right.
So now all of a sudden the cuts are like 2.5 feet from the curb. And, you know, we're looking, they're asking to waive some of our standards, and we are in turn looking to change some of our standards to make the street repairs better and last longer in the best interest of the city. So
I would suggest if you could get those to the council as quickly as possible, well, you'd find a lot of support here for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any of you have other budget questions? I know we're running out of time, but
No, I'm good.
I have
any more?
one that's
2 minutes.
I have one that's not really a budget, but like culverts. So, like on Burnett Ave, east of Midler, there's like concrete ditches kind of on the edge of the road, and does that require engineering in the way like you're describing? So you have to have an engineering assessment of that, because that water somehow flows somewhere, and that would add to the storm water runoff also.
I believe what you're describing is a concrete gutter along the edge of the pavement.
Yeah, there you
I
go.
mean, if that's installed on your street, that should be directed towards a catch basin. That's what it's designed to do, is direct flow to a drainage structure, which was connected to the sewer.
Do we ever add those, and is the level of effort for those less than the level of effort for curbs and a full improvement?
I think the city's preference is for curb because of snow removal and the impact of salt to concrete gutters. I mean, DPW's installed it in limited instances, but typically our preference is for curb.
So it's not like that's a cheap way to get a curb, it just
No.
manually do that. And then my other last question is in terms of these unimproved streets that have had creep like over time, where the road gets bigger and bigger and bigger. If DPW is going to go in and is willing to restore green space in the area, does that require engineering, or does that not require engineering because it's just going in and like redoing what should have been there?
I mean, we have the original paving plans of all the streets in the city, so occasionally, you know, with those unimproved streets, you do get creep. So I can't really think of a street that we've done recently, but there is a way to go back and look at the records to see how wide that street originally was.
Okay, I would like to do that on one street, but we can do that later.
I believe that's the end of the time. We're over time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it, both of you. Thank you.